Okay, I'm with Howard Leonhardt, who is one of the leading entrepreneurs in crowdfunding in a number of different areas. And I'm going to start by asking you, Howard, will you tell us a little bit about your background and what you do now, both with the California Stock Exchange and the other ventures that and initiatives that you're involved with, please?
Thanks, Barry. Most of my life I've been an inventor and developer of products for treating heart disease. And when you're in a CEO of a biotech or biomed company, by nature you're in the capital raising business because you end up as a leader of a biotech company, startup, you end up spending at least 50% of your time raising capital. So when people ask me what's the connection between fintech and biotech, it's that if you're in biotech, you're in fintech whether you like it or not, because you have to harness every tool you can to keep your company alive, because it's a long road going through the FDA process.
Sorry, I just want to let you guys know that in about 30 minutes we have a Free Lunch Friday speaking event. So you're fine right now, but just excuse us, we're going to be like...
Oh, okay, great. We actually have to be out of here in 20 minutes. Oh, great, thank you.
Okay, don't worry about that. We'll edit it later. So just picking up from where you left off, we're all in fintech, right?
And the short version of a long story is, the first experience was raising capital. I got introduced to the fact that you basically could only sell to millionaires and you couldn't market or generally solicit, and you were only allowed 35 non-accredited investors, and the rules to comply with that were very costly and difficult. Yeah. So that was the first experience. The second experience was we took our company BioHeart, stem cells for heart repair, public on NASDAQ in 2008, the only biotech IPO in the whole United States in 2008. And it cost us $4.8 million to raise $6.5 million. And I was furious that the lawyers, the accountants, the insurance companies, the bankers took the lion's share of a capital raise, and we needed money to continue to develop our life-saving product for people suffering heart failure. And we ended up not having the funds to finish the trial because it all went into regulatory costs. So I channeled that anger into getting involved with lobbying. At that time, I was part of the University of Florida Center for Entrepreneurship, and when we started to kind of get political, they said, you can't be political with us, so we formed in 2006 separately the Entrepreneurship Party Public Policy Institute, and we could be as political as we want. So we would endorse candidates that were sticking up for entrepreneurs, and we would not endorse candidates that we felt were not sticking up for the agenda that we felt. And we had one cause that stood above all others, which was reducing the cost and complexity for small firms raising capital. And again, to shorten up the story, I had gotten to be friends with two governors of the state of Florida, and they sent me up to Washington with a letter, please accept Howie in your office, and it was from Charlie Crist, Independent, and Jeb Bush, Republican. And I went up with a letter expecting I was going to get, this great treatment, having two governors introduce me, and it didn't work at all. I sat in a waiting room to see a senator for like an hour, and then an intern came out, and she just heard my sob story about raising capital, took some notes, and said that she'd give it to the senator, and nothing happened. But again, to shorten up the story, I met the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. I met the people that eventually formed the Startup America Partnership, the Coughlin Foundation, the Case Foundation, and they had the power, along with others, and then Jason and Woody and the whole group got involved, and along with a whole bunch of other people, we all just started promoting what became the McHenry bill and the Schweikert bill, and I introduced the group to PopVox. So one of my contributions is PopVox is a very easy tool to pull together support for legislation, and I use that to get people to sign petitions saying, please vote yes for these bills. And I don't remember what the data was, but PopVox got over 100,000 letters, not just from me, but from all the people that used it in support of the bill. And then, I ended up with many people at the White House in April of 2012 with the President for the signing of the Jobs Act, and I was so enthusiastic about the event that they asked me to be state spokesperson for California via the Startup America Partnership and via the subsidiary, or whatever you call it, Startup California, which reported to Startup America Partnership, and since then about 70 speeches on crowdfunding.
I saw a recent quote from Tim Draper, who said in very stark terms that in the world, the nation, the state that gets the regulation right and adapts to innovation. I'm paraphrasing. He said it much more colourfully than this. Is going to be the one that kind of runs away in this new era. And we're not getting it. He's speaking for America. He would say we're not getting it right. We're not even getting it half right. We have a big problem to solve. How do you see it?
I do believe in public-private initiatives to make things better. That's a difficult one to come up with a quick statement for, but I guess in general I would support that, and I think that the current administration has really tried to do good in making things better, and hats off for it's been since 1933 that you couldn't generally solicit. Non-accredited investors didn't have access to open to early stage deals, and now they do. So I do want to give credit to the bipartisan initiative that made this happen. We always complain about what's not happening, but in this case, the vote was 407 to 17 and 521 to 1 for the two bills, and that obviously is bipartisan support. And we do have more work to do, yes. And I just want to comment that even though you pass laws, passing laws isn't enough. It really takes people to promote it, initiate it, package it, make it happen, and no matter what, the law itself doesn't make it happen. It takes people to make it happen.
Yeah. Okay, moving on to kind of the broader area of fintech then. So, broad area, broad term, encompassing quite a lot, including cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin and money transmission. How do you see fintech, and how do you see crowdfunding's place and importance in that?
Well, I think the enormous implications of crowdfunding are underestimated, and I believe that in the most simple way, it's uncorking the most important pent-up, bottled asset that we have in our nation and any nation, which is its people. And I was a hungry young entrepreneur in my 20s that couldn't get capital, and eventually found a way to bootstrap to be able to make it happen. But there are many, many people with fire in their belly that have the talent, have everything. I just happened to watch Walt Before Mickey, which is the story of Walt Disney before he drew Mickey Mouse, and he had a very difficult time getting capital because of a lack of capital. Bankrupted two companies. Everything else was pretty much right except for not having capital. And then, of course, the third company, we all know what happened. Walt Disney Company became one of the most successful companies in the history of America. But if he would have access to capital earlier, I think he would have been on that path of success earlier. And there are many people like him that end up not getting the capital and end up giving up out of necessity, and it's unfortunate. We're missing a lot of great innovations because of lack of access to capital, particularly with women, minorities, people from just ordinary families like Walt, grew up in an ordinary middle-class family. The old way was really stacked to the Gulf Country Club crowd. The old law said that you could only sell to millionaires, and you had to have a substantial pre-existing relationship, and you couldn't advertise. So if you were born in a normal middle-class family in Kansas City or Minneapolis like I was, you didn't necessarily have access to people that were pre-existing relationship with a millionaire. A lot of people don't know that the old law was clear in that you couldn't meet a millionaire for the first time and just offer your stock. Now, there was just varying state regulations that interpreted that, but basically, if you did go to a Gulf Country Club and said, "Hey guys, I'm raising money, can you give me money?" You could be, in the worst case, put in jail for that. And thank goodness that the Jobs Act has changed that.
So it's interesting to speculate on different histories, isn't it? So it's interesting to think of a world where Disney didn't exist. Do you subscribe to the idea that history is found or made? So is it that niche would have existed and someone else would have filled it, or would the world be different? And and for entrepreneurs generally, are entrepreneurs making the world or just exploiting natural resources?
maybe a little bit of both, but I'm more a believer that personal initiative makes it happen. That if Walt wouldn't have existed, there would have been something like amusement parks and something like cartoons and something like feel-good movies, but they wouldn't have had the particular touch that he had. And just like there may have been, I often tell people that who talk about a similar subject, which is restraint of free trade. And could you imagine if in 1950 in the United States they said no foreign music, so only U.S. music can be heard by U.S. citizens, and you know, we would have gotten some music, but we wouldn't have gotten the Beatles, we wouldn't have gotten the Rolling Stones, we wouldn't have gotten Led Zeppelin, and would have our lives been better with just the U.S. music? My answer is no. You can't create the Beatles out of the blue, and you know, there's unique talents that rise forward in the process and personal initiative, and I'm a big believer in churn and fail forward fast and experimentation, and by allowing a lot of tries coming out of that, you're going to have some really amazing things like Apple Computer.
Yeah. So we are making history as well as living in it. Yeah.
It's a little bit of both, but I would, if I had to choose one, I'd say we're making it.
So so where are we going? You know, in terms of, talk a little bit as well, if you would please, about the California Stock Exchange and the initiatives around that. But you know, let's also, you know, let's finish up and let's look into the future. How, in the best version, would the future like, maybe through the lens of those other things, of the California Stock Exchange and the other initiatives?
You know, the California Stock Exchange is meant to be the first social good impact stock exchange in the United States. We're on a multi-year plan to get there. We're not there yet. And what we did this September, just a few weeks ago, is we launched the CalAX 30 Social Good Impact Index Fund. And so far, we are beating the S&P 500, and that's our goal. Well, we might have to modify it a little bit. We're still in the beta stage. But the idea is to align companies that treat people well and have a sense of purpose with investors. And we believe that that's actually on the path of providing better returns, that companies that have a sense of purpose and treat people well and don't just look at the quarterly net profits as their only goal are more apt to have long-term profitability than those who only look at the numbers and don't care about people, community, or purpose. And if you're a believer in that, this is going to be your marketplace. And we've started on that. So the CalAX 30 Social Good Impacts Fund, powered by the registered broker-dealer Motif Investing, it's meant to be kind of a test for the bigger market, so 30 stocks to get started. And we are in experimental mode ourselves, so we might not get it right exactly the first time, but we're working on it with the idea that we eventually created an exchange where we would only list companies that test well for treating their people well, a sense of community, protecting the environment, and a sense of purpose. And they might not score equally on all of those parameters, but in general they will meet a minimal criteria of having a mix of social good as well as being darn good businesses. And we believe the two are in alignment. And we believe crowdfunding fits in that a lot of things that are driven by crowdfunding is having a passion to try to make a change in the world, to make something better, to solve a problem, and that passion can now be funded through crowdfunding. The beginning of, I mentioned earlier that Ben Franklin had the statement that money is of a proliferative nature. To get the second is much easier than to get the first dollar, but the trouble is in getting the first dollar. And that really defines crowdfunding, that often businesses that could grow to be great successes, their most difficult obstacle to overcome is just getting started and getting that very first capital to get off the ground, where the risk is the highest, where they're least likely to have enough data to compel seasoned investors, but if they're given a chance. And you know, fundamentally, if I had to put in one sentence why I believe in crowdfunding, is because I know there are so many people out there with the right talent, with the fire in the belly, the early Walt Disneys, that if they're just given some funding, they can turn that fire in the belly, the dream and the passion they have to do something special into a viable business. But they can't do that if they can't get off the ground.
Yeah. You mentioned when we were talking earlier the program that you have to help businesses do that. Can you talk a little bit about that?
We have a few different programs, a few different companies, but a public-private partnership I'm involved with is the Startup California. It originally began as a authorized unit of the Startup America Partnership. Since then, it's kind of developed its independent wings, and it's basically a free of charge site for any entrepreneur seeking to get going. There's a learning series on there, 50-some videos. One video is should you form an LLC, an S Corp, or C Corp. One video is how to get a crowdfunding campaign started. Another video is how to build a team and advisory board. And we try to put on that site all the resources that a startup might want to access to get off to a good start. And then we just sponsor great events. So we hold a limited number of events ourselves, but we also promote events that we've curated that we think are great for entrepreneurs in their community. And obviously Startup California is focused on California, and we in particular promote events in California.
Okay, so looking through those lenses and with the experience that you've got, if we can get some of these rocks out of the road and get some more people to kind of understand and see the potential and the kind of vision that you've been talking about, how would you see the future that we could make?
Well, I think one thing is getting more people to participate, and I mentioned earlier when we spoke that I really believe that we should implement a voluntary program where when people use their debit card, or they can also have it ask their employer to deduct it from their paycheck. But I think everybody should start deducting 5% from their purchases, 5% from their paychecks to go towards an investment fund, and a certain portion of that investment fund, maybe 20%, should go to funding startups, particularly in their local community, and the other 80% can go in assets like the CalX 30 Social Good Impact Fund that's curated by professionals it's meant to be a blend of being conservative but growth, and allow people to participate in wealth appreciation. One of the things that I'm most passionate about is ending wealth inequality around the world, and particularly for people like women, minorities, and people that grew up in normal middle-class families. It's often cited that women do 2/3 of the physical labor on planet Earth, but only own 1% of the assets on planet Earth, and that's a very dramatic expression of the extreme, and some people dispute that, but even anything close to that is a tragedy. And I think that crowdfunding goes two ways. It's one way is that companies getting capital to get started. The other is that allowing people that never had a chance to participate in early stage assets that have the highest potential for appreciation to be able to participate. Before, only the millionaires could buy into Apple, into Facebook, into Google in the earliest stages while they were private before they were public, and now that's open. And also I think the idea of using the debit card 5% deduction is that it's seamless. The people that are living paycheck to paycheck, they're unlikely to be able to sock away into savings or to write a check, which maybe they should do in their own good, but it's just so hard to pull off. But if it's seamless, every day they're buying the toilet paper and the milk, they get 5%. They won't notice it, but it'll start adding up over time. And I think that's part of the future. But on a much broader scale and a much bigger way, I think that because of all these things, we're about to enter the era in the United States in particular and worldwide, our greatest era of creativity and economic growth. And that's a big statement. And when I had the chance to be with the president when he signed that Jobs Act, I tell the story many times that I had a tingle in my spine and I was overcome with emotion. And I really felt like I was witnessing something as important as Abraham Lincoln signing the Emancipation Proclamation. Received a little criticism for making that analogy, but the reason I felt that is that I felt that was freeing people from economic bondage. People often say the word job is just above broke, and that the chance for people that never were given a chance, that had everything it took, the talent, the work, the appreciation for opportunity, but just couldn't get access to the beginning capital to get out of the gate, now with this law, we're going to have a better chance. It doesn't mean that it's an easy free lunch. It doesn't mean that just signing that paper automatically easy go, money just flows into your account. But it gives a chance for the people that do have that fire in their belly, who are going to work on a crowdfunding campaign and work it really hard with 1,000 calls and 100 meetings and treating the campaign, working 18 hours a day to make it a success. It gives them that opportunity, though, where even before you couldn't generally solicit, you couldn't sell to anyone other than millionaires that you already knew, and that in itself, those two things alone, stopped a great number of the people that weren't in that Golf Country Club crowd to have a chance. And so I think we're headed towards the greatest period of economic growth and creativity, and because of the experimentation. I'm a student of innovation, and try a lot of stuff and keep what works. If you study the teachings of Tom Peters, he's been one of my most influential teachers. Fail forward fast, ready, fire, aim, and data shows that in organizations and communities where you have a lot of experimentation and you keep the best, and that those organizations, those communities end up better for it. And maybe not every company is going to be a success. There was a really famous speech that I recommend everybody go online and pull up and either watch or read, but President Ronald Reagan gave a speech at Moscow State University, I think it was in 1988, and he talked about the American experiment. He talked about that fact that people say, well, what about the failures? And he said, Ford failed, Disney failed. The failure is in America is almost our greatest strength, in that we have a tolerance for people to fail and make a comeback, and they learn from the failure, and the second or third try it becomes even better. And through all these failures, breakthroughs happen, and people realign, and learning what doesn't work is actually puts you that much closer to knowing what does work. And I think we're headed towards a period where there's going to be greater amount of experimentation and thus greater amount of breakthrough innovations. And the coolest thing about it is that it's going to allow people that were inhibited or blocked, in a sense, by gatekeeping system from being able to participate in that experimentation and innovation and startup launch to finally be able to participate.
Yeah, absolutely. We see huge amounts of innovation that would never have got out of the lab or seen the light of day for wrong economic reasons. Every day it flows through the crowdfunding centre for 400-500 new campaigns every day. So absolutely. I had a really interesting conversation yesterday with my good friend Victoria Stolchenko, who I think you know. And she was quoting the statistic that I think in 5 years, that 40% jobs are shrinking. The job supply is shrinking, the quality of jobs is going down as automation bites and so on. So this is a much needed part for the future. It is what you've described there. So how do you see that side of things in terms of job creation?
Well, I think creating your own job is a good thing, and I think that this is a special time that it used to be that in every industry there were major gatekeepers that tended to be the very wealthy people that somehow grabbed control of industries. If you were an artist, the only way you could make it is if you signed with a giant record company that controlled everything. If you were making a movie, it was similar, and if you were starting a company, it was somewhat similar. Or if you wanted to make income, you had to join a big company and have a job. All of those things are going out. It's one of the great things of the modern age. We have a inspirational works TV network called Leonhardt TV, LeonhardtLeonhardtV.com, and 3 billion views across all of the programs on our site. Cool. We have a music channel, and on the music channel we have independent artists, and one of them is Macy Kate, 17-year-old gal out of Boston. She goes in her garage and makes a cover of a popular tune from Imagine Dragons, and she gets 8 million views. I often say that she probably doesn't understand the impact of how special it is what she did just going into her garage with her friends. But 8 million views is more than the amount of people that watch ABC and NBC News probably combined on a given night. And the Beatles, as an example, their first record release in the United States only sold 35,000 copies. And here Macy in her garage with no record company, no no filter. She just puts it up on YouTube,
Huge.
8 million views. It's a new age. She doesn't realize that you couldn't have done that in 1963, and it's very much similar with entrepreneurship. That it used to be that anything you wanted to do, you would have a bunch of people that were gatekeepers that would say, no, you can't go, we're not going to let you go through this, you can't get your movie out, you can't get your song out, we have the keys and we're not giving you access. It's a new age, and part of it from entrepreneurship is that it used to cost so much money to get a business off the ground that it would be even more inhibitive for people to get started. But now with communication and resources and rapid prototyping and all the tools to be able to get going, it's more possible to bootstrap than it ever has been before.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. We were with a group of entrepreneurs and economic development folks and people who help entrepreneurs in Watts yesterday, and we gave them all a permission slip and asked them to tear it up. So
that's cool. That's great.
Yeah. So finally, one last message. What's the one thing, the one message that you would give to everyone out there? What should we do? What should we look to? What should we change?
Well, since this subject is about crowdfunding, and I would recommend to look at the free publication we've created, Top 20 Tips for Crowdfunding Success. It's available on calxcrowdfund.com, CALX crowdfund.com, and just to highlight the tips there, the short version of it is crowdfunding is work. If you believe that you're just going to put out a video and email to a few friends and post it on Facebook and LinkedIn and $1 million is going to be in your account the next day, you're in for a rude surprise. Unfortunately, even though the Jobs Act and the crowdfunding legislation is an enormous breakthrough and a great opportunity and something to celebrate, it isn't an easy free lunch. It still requires work, but just to have that opportunity to be able to do that work is a very special thing. But you better plan on 1,000 telephone calls. You better plan on asking every friend and every person you know to help in the campaign and really keep them accountable to helping you in the campaign if they've committed to do so. Have many, many personal events. Use the techniques of PR hacking and content marketing to get coverage in the media at a low cost. Go ahead and read the other 20 tips. But I would recommend to anybody who's thinking about a campaign to look at that. It's free. We just have gathered the best practices that we've seen in this course of being involved with crowdfunding in our own experience. And our experience with Leonhardt Ventures is we've raised $145 million to fund 30 companies since our foundation. So we've had our own experience in crowdfunding. And we like to say we were crowdfunding before crowdfunding was cool. In our case, we sold a lot of shares to doctors and distributors early on in the development of our medical products because they understood enough about the opportunity. But the final message is if you're going to embark on a crowdfunding campaign, be ready to work harder than you've ever worked before. And you wouldn't expect that somebody put out a video and a press release and they get elected governor of California. It's not much different for raising capital. You can't just put out a video and a press release and post and expect it's a campaign. You got to get out there and shake hands and debate and overcome the critics who are trying to express that your plan is not a good plan, and fight and work and work and work. I'm not a believer in the Kickstarter formula that 30-day campaign and cut it off. I really believe campaigns should be considered to be at least a year, if not a year and a half, and including the preparation phase. I also the last thing from the tip is that always put yourself in the position of your audience, or in the case of investors, make it about their experience, not necessarily your experience, but absolutely. If they're investing in music, they're investing because of their love in music, so give them the experience of feeling the participation of being involved with the creation of music. That's what they're buying into, not just to buy a stock and get a return. If they were going to do that, they could find other vehicles to invest. They're believing in your cause, believing in what you're doing, whatever it may be. And I just used the example of creating music because it's an easy one to understand. But give them a chance to feel the same feeling you have as a creator because that's really what they're wanting when they participate in an early stage, is they want the experience of being part of it. So be sure to give them that. So that's the last piece of advice.
That's brilliant advice, if you ask me. And so the message is the doors are wide open. Roll up your sleeves.
That's right.
Howard, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah.